Hey everybody, this is Robert Burke. I'd like to welcome you to episode number 4 of When to Play. And on today's episode, I'm going to review a card game called Fleet. Fleet was a Kickstarter game that I was lucky enough to get in on. I say lucky enough because, as a Kickstarter backer, I received a bunch of cool promo cards and a wooden Fleet die that I don't think ships with the mass market game that's out there now. But I've got all those extra things, and I'll talk about those. I think some of them are available in an expansion that you can buy for the game. But Fleet is a card game for 2 to 4 players. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour, probably around 45 minutes is the median amount of time it takes to play Fleet. As a 2-player game, I don't know if I would recommend Fleet. If you're a gamer that consistently plays 2-player games, like with your spouse, for example, if that's what you're looking for, I think there are better options. But as a 4-player and a 3-player game, I think Fleet is amazing. It's probably my favorite. Well, it is. It definitely was my favorite card game that came out in 2012, and I think it's definitely worth your time. In the game Fleet, you are trying to build a commercial fishing empire through cards, and you are trying to score victory points by getting licenses. There is an auction element where you are getting licenses to catch certain types of commercial fish, and I could show you those here. These are the different licenses that you can get in the game, and this happens in an auction mechanic, and that's partly why the 2-player game I don't think works very well, because a 2-player auction just doesn't really work that well. But with 4 players, this auction mechanic adds a lot to the game. So you'll see there are tuna licenses, there are processing vessel licenses, there are shrimp licenses, there are lobster licenses, there are cod licenses, and there are tuna licenses. Now, before you can launch a boat, you have got to have a license for that type of boat. So that's where this auction mechanic comes in play, and that's the first thing, that's the first phase in a round when you play the game Fleet. You are going to auction a certain amount of dollars, and it has to be at least, there's a minimum cost on here. For example, this tuna has a minimum bid start of $5. So you've got to open bidding at $5. So if this was on the table, I could open bidding and I could say, I want the tuna license, I'm going to bid $5. The next player could bid $6. And it could go around the table, it could be $8 by the time it got back around to me again. So you've really got to manage your money wisely. You want to try to get licenses as cheaply as you can, but then again, sometimes you really need a license, so you're willing to bid it up. So that's just a great mechanic. You really get a sense of the auction, and it works well with the theme too, because of fish auctions, and auctions happen a lot in that business. So it's definitely a good mechanic to have in the game. And the other thing about these licenses is the more licenses you get of the same type, you are going to get bonuses. So for example, if my first tuna license I get, at the end of your turn, you're going to draw cards. And at the start of the game, everybody gets to draw 2 cards, but they've got to throw one back, discard one. So they can keep one and discard one. But if you have a tuna license, you get to keep both of those cards that you draw at the end of the turn. So that's good, because that gives you an advantage. You're getting more cards than everybody else. When you have 2 tuna licenses, you can draw 3, but you have to discard 1. So now your choices of the 2 cards you're getting at the end of your turn are better. If you get 3 tuna licenses, you can draw 3 and keep all 3. So every one of these licenses is going to scale and give you better abilities as you get more of them. So that's very cool. So In coordination with the licenses, there are also boat cards. And I'll show you the boat cards. There are 6 different types of boats. And these boats let you fish and catch fish of that type. So there is a tuna boat. So again, to launch a tuna boat, you have got to have a tuna license that you've won in an auction. Once you have a tuna license, you can launch as many tuna boats on that license as you wish. And that's one thing that sometimes people get confused about. They forget how the licenses and the boats are different. And the fish that you catch with your boat are these blue cubes. And they're worth a victory point, 1 victory point each at the end of the game. But people get confused on that sometimes, because once you have a boat, you can catch fish with that boat as long as it's captained. But every boat, doesn't matter what type of boat it is, catches the same fish cubes. All the cubes are the same. So a lobster boat doesn't catch a specific lobster resource type. It just catches 1 cube, basically. But you need a lobster license to launch a lobster boat. And the boat needs to be captained before it can start catching fish. So on every card, you'll see, this is the king crab fishing boat card. There's a few things on here to consider. First, that this boat costs 3 money to launch. So if I wanted to launch this king crab boat, I would need to spend 3 money to do that. Some cost 1 money, some cost 2 money. This is one of the more expensive ones. It's also, however, worth 3 VP victory points at the end of the game. So the more boats you launch during a game of fleet, the more victory points you're going to have at the end of the game. Also, the licenses are worth victory points. This COD license, for example, is worth 4 VP. So the more licenses and boats you have down at the end of the game, the more points you're going to score. So it's important to get these down. Now, how do you pay to launch these boats? Every card in your hand has a money value. Like this king crab is worth a lot of VP and it costs a lot, but it's only worth 1 money if you want to use it as money. So the cards can be used as boats or they can be used as money. So if I wanted to use this tuna boat as money, I would get 3 money for discarding it. So it's a neat mechanic. It means that you don't have to spend a lot of time looking at different cards and different resources. You use this single card for multiple things. Victory points, boat, your money is on the 1 card as well. And when you turn the card over, that is your captain. So if you want to captain a boat, you would have to first launch a boat. Like if I launched this tuna boat, I would spend 3 money. I would discard 3 money's worth of cards. And then my captain card would go on top. So I'm effectively discarding another card in order to captain it. But I can't start catching fish until I captain the boat. So the cards are very important in the game, and really you're trying to build a card engine, because building a card engine, the more cards you can get, the more options you have to launch boats and score victory points, to captain boats so you can catch fish, which are also victory points, and it's also the more money you have. The more money you have, the more things you can do, the more points you can score. So you're trying to build that engine efficiently, and that's what Fleet is all about. It also comes with these great little cards that show you the turn order, and the turn order is, I already talked about the auction phase, the first thing you're going to do. Then you're going to launch boats, hire captains, I've talked about those. Then you're going to fish. So every turn during the fishing phase, every boat you have that's captained can add 1 of these fish cubes to it, and that's worth a victory point at the end of the game. You can also, if you have a processing vessel, you can trade these in during the process phase here to get more cards. So you can trade those points for cards if you want. And then finally, there's the draw phase where you draw 2 cards, but you have to discard 1 unless you have the special license that lets you keep more than 1. So the special abilities are, have to do with captains or money, like a shrimp, for example. When you auction, if you have a shrimp license, when you do an auction or launch a boat, it costs you 1 less money. So every shrimp license that you get increases the discount you get on launching boats, and doing auctions. So that's a good one as well. So all the licenses, the different types of boats, they're very well balanced, I think, and it makes for an interesting game because there's different strategies. Now, with any card game, there are going to be random elements, and Fleet is no different. Although everybody starts with the same exact cards, they start with one of each type of boat, 6 types of boats. So everybody starts at ground zero with the exact same thing. But how cards are drawn and your place in the auction, obviously, there is going to be some random elements in it. But you do need to plan well and strategize if you hope to win the game. And the game is quick and it's fast. And once people learn the phases and how they go, it moves really quickly and it's a ton of fun. But the best thing about Fleet is the theme. Now, when I first heard about Fleet, the theme sounded like it wouldn't excite me very much. I mean, commercial fishing, really? Is that a theme? That sounds weird, but it works so well. And now that I've played the game a bunch of times, I don't think there should be any commercial fisherman on the planet that doesn't own a copy of this game, because it's dripping with theme, and you really feel like you're building a fleet. You really feel like you're competing for a limited resource, because the fish are limited, and when the fish supply runs out in the game is over, and you count up, or when the licenses run out, the game is over, and you count up to see who has the most victory points, and that's the winner. So the theme is just, it oozes into every little crevice and every crease in this game, and it's a big selling point for me. Even if commercial fishing isn't something that sounds exciting to you, it didn't sound exciting to me. It works very well, and I'm a fan, especially with a lot of the different commercial fishing shows that are on the different reality shows that you'll find on cable television these days. I think there's probably a lot of fans out there that are attracted to this theme more than they would have been in the past. But I'm a fan. So who is this game for? That's a tough one, because the game it might be a little more difficult than what I would like to introduce to, say, family members that I have whose gaming experience doesn't go beyond Monopoly and 500 Rummy. However, if there's people in your family that play cards, or if you have friends that play cards, just regular cards, poker or rummy or canasta or something like this, I think Fleet is a game that you could get them to play, and I think it's a game that they could very well like. And I think it could act as a gateway game for people who like regular card games. I think Fleet can act as a gateway game for those people. So I would highly recommend that you give that a shot. If people like card games, they may like Fleet. If they are gamers who game more seriously and like card games, then this is a must-try game for you. And I don't care what the card game is that you like, whether it's a game like, if you like Lost Cities or Battle Line, or even Magic the Gathering or Netrunner. If you like card-based games, then this Fleet is a game that you really have to try. It's short. It's not short enough to really be a filler, but it could be considered a filler. I mean, if you're at a game night and you've got to wait a half an hour for a game to finish up, then Fleet might be something you could get in to fill some time. But it can go a little longer than that too, so it's kind of in the middle. If you are really love heavy strategy-based games, then Fleet might not be for you, but it might fill a need for you as well as a filler game when you want something lighter. It's not really that heavy. It's not gonna burn your brain, but there are enough options and choices and strategies to make it very fulfilling. It's a fun game.